All right. Today we're going to tear down one of the biggest myths about one of history's most misunderstood philosophies. We're going to talk about why that idea of a stone-faced, unfeeling stoic is just completely wrong, and we'll discover the true strength that comes from feeling your emotions the right way.
So let's just get right into it with the big question. Are Stoics emotionless robots? I mean, when you hear the word Stoic, you probably picture someone who just bottles everything up, shows no emotion, right? But is that what the ancient philosophy of Stoicism was actually all about?
Look at this. This lays out the whole misunderstanding perfectly. On one side, you've got the modern myth, emotionless, repressed, that whole stiff upper lip thing. But on the other side, that's the ancient truth. The Stoics were all about feeling deeply, but the key was to process those feelings, to build real, genuine emotional resilience. The two could not be more different.
And that's the crucial point here. This modern idea of being stoic is a total distortion. It's basically a caricature that completely misses the nuance and the wisdom of the original philosophy. The ancient Stoics had a way more sophisticated and, frankly, a much more human view of our emotional lives.
So that begs the question, right? If they weren't about repressing feelings, what did they believe about the really heavy stuff? How do they actually approach things like grief, pain, and profound loss? Well, that's exactly where we're going next.
The whole Stoic approach to emotion really hinges on this one critical distinction they made between two types of feeling. The easiest way to think about it is like this: the difference between the initial shock of an event and the prolonged suffering that can come after.
Okay, so the first type of feeling they called pathos. This is that immediate, involuntary gut punch. It's the tears that just well up in your eyes, the lump in your throat, that flush of anger. The Stoics saw this as a completely natural and unavoidable part of being human. It's a reflex. It's not a flaw.
Now, the second type is what they called a pathological passion. And this is the key. This isn't the initial shock. This is the sustained, destructive emotion that we build on afterward. And where does it come from? Well, according to the Stoics, it comes from our judgment, from the stories we start telling ourselves about what just happened.
And this little chart just illustrates the difference perfectly. Pathos, the shock, is involuntary. It's a natural reaction that just happens to you. But the pathological passion, the suffering, that's where we have a choice. It's something you actively participate in. It's something you do by accepting and repeating certain judgments about what happened.
Okay, so that's the theory, but how do you actually put it into practice? This brings us to the Stoic framework for feeling, which is really a guide on how to process your emotions, not just repress them.
Let's just imagine it. You experience some kind of intense personal loss. That first wave of pain, that initial shock, it arrives, and it's immediate and it's powerful.
And right here, in this moment of intense pain, the Stoic teaching is actually pretty radical for our modern ears. They would say, feel it. That initial grief, that shock, it is natural. It is not a sign of weakness to cry or to feel that pain. It's a sign of being human.
See, this is the turning point. The initial feeling isn't the problem. The real work, the real practice of Stoicism, it begins in that little space right after, with the story we choose to tell ourselves about the pain.
So what does that work actually look like? Well, it's a pretty straightforward three-step process. First, you acknowledge the pain. You don't deny it. Second, you accept that it's there without judging yourself for feeling it. And third, and this is the really active part, you apply reason to reframe the whole thing.
So how do you apply reason? Well, you start asking yourself some very direct questions, like, is dwelling on this specific brand of suffering actually helpful to me right now? Or, in this whole situation, what is actually within my control? And maybe the most important one, how can I think about this differently so this one emotion doesn't become a tyrant that runs my entire life?
Which brings us full circle. We started out with this idea of a strong Stoic who feels absolutely nothing. But now, I think we can see that true Stoic strength is something else entirely.
It is so important to get this right. True Stoic strength was never, ever about feeling nothing. It's not about becoming numb or building some kind of wall around your heart. The real goal is way more profound than that.
And this is the ultimate takeaway. True strength is not feeling nothing. It's feeling rightly. It's about allowing yourself that natural, human reaction of pain, and then wisely choosing not to add to it with destructive judgments. It's about processing what happens to you so you can build a resilient and not a repressed inner life. That is the true strength of a Stoic.